Why can't you be more like your brother? It's a simple sentence, 8 words. Sometimes it's said in anger after a bad grade. Sometimes it's disguised as a joke at a family dinner, said with a laugh, but landing like a blade. And sometimes it isn't spoken at all. It's the look, the sigh, the tiny shift in tone when your name is called versus their name. And that's what makes it so hard to explain. Because from the outside, nothing big happened. No screaming, no dramatic moment, just a pattern, a constant, quiet message. You are the less impressive one. But here's the truth. Psychology doesn't sugarcoat. When you're compared to a sibling consistently, especially in childhood, it doesn't just create jealousy. It creates a wound at the level of identity. Because a child doesn't hear comparison as information. A child hears it as a survival verdict. In a child's world, love is not a luxury. Love is oxygen. So when love is handed out like a trophy and someone else keeps winning, your nervous system learns something devastating. Approval is scarce. Affection is conditional. And being yourself is unsafe. You start living like you're on trial, like there's always a scoreboard floating above your head. You aren't just trying to succeed, you're trying to earn the right to exist without disappointment. And even when you grow up, that scoreboard doesn't disappear, it just becomes invisible. It shows up in your relationships, your ambition, your anxiety, the way praise makes you uncomfortable, because part of you is still bracing for the follow-up. Yeah, but your sister did it better. If you've ever felt that, this video is for you. Most people hear this topic and immediately minimize it. Oh, come on, parents compare kids all the time. It's motivation. It builds character. But let's reframe this with adult clarity. If comparison truly created confidence, then the child who was compared would grow up feeling empowered. But that's not what happens. What actually happens is the child learns a dangerous equation. Love is something you compete for. And that's not motivation. That's conditioning, because in healthy families, love isn't a prize, it's a foundation. A child doesn't need to earn basic emotional safety. They're not required to outperform their sibling to deserve warmth, attention, or pride. But in dysfunctional family systems, comparison isn't random. It's strategic. It's a way the family regulates anxiety. It's a way parents manage their image. It's a way the household keeps order through pressure. So one child becomes the proof the family's doing well, and the other becomes the reminder that something is wrong. That's why this isn't just sibling rivalry, it's a system. And if you grew up inside it, you didn't just lose a competition, you were trained to believe you were never enough unless you were someone else. So why do parents do this? Why would a mother look at one child and say, "Why can't you be like your sister?" Why would a father praise one kid like a hero and treat the other like a constant disappointment? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of the time, comparison isn't about the children's performance, it's about the parents' emotional needs. Because many parents, especially emotionally immature ones, don't see their children as separate individuals. They see them as mirrors, as proof, as extensions of themselves. And comparison becomes a tool, not to raise a child, but to regulate anxiety, protect ego, and maintain control. In psychology, there's a concept often described as narcissistic extension, where a parent experiences a child's achievements as their own. When one child excels, sports, grades, popularity, the parent feels elevated. That child becomes the family's win, the symbol that everything is fine, but then you come along. Maybe you're quieter, more sensitive, more artistic, less compliant, or maybe you're simply different. And instead of curiosity, the parent feels threat, because difference creates uncertainty. And for anxious parents, uncertainty feels like danger. So rather than adapting, they push, they compare, they shame. In fact, there are 3 common architects of comparison. 1, the achievement-obsessed parent. They don't raise children, they raise resumes. Your sibling becomes a trophy, and you become a problem to fix. 2. The anxiety control parent. They can't tolerate chaos, so they use comparison like a steering wheel. Be more like them means stop making me feel out of control. 3. The emotionally immature parent. This one hurts the most. They may feel subconsciously jealous, threatened, or resentful, so they split the children into roles, one to admire, one to diminish. And here's what's tragic. When a parent compares you to a sibling, they aren't describing your value. They're revealing their limitation. They're basically saying, I don't know how to love you as you are, so I'm going to pressure you into being easier for me. And a child will always interpret that as, something about me is wrong. In many families, comparison doesn't happen casually. It becomes a structure, a role system, almost like the family is a stage, and every child gets assigned a character. One child becomes the golden child, the proof the family is successful, respectable, doing it right. They're praised loudly, protected, bragged about in public. Even their mistakes get softened. He's just stressed. She's so talented. And then there's the other role, the scapegoat, the child who carries the emotional garbage of the household, the one blamed when the mood turns sour, the one who gets labelled difficult, lazy, dramatic, selfish, sometimes for doing the exact same behaviours the golden child gets excused for. Here's what you need to understand. This is not about who is better. It's about what the family needs. The golden child holds the family's pride. The scapegoat holds the family's shame. And once those roles are assigned, the game becomes rigged. You could work twice as hard and still be behind. You could succeed and it would be minimized. You could fail once and it would become your identity. Because the family isn't evaluating facts, they're protecting a story where one child represents hope and the other represents the problem. And if you were the compared sibling, the inferior one, you weren't just hurt by the comparisons. You were raised inside a psychological trap. No matter what you did, your role stayed the same. And that's why the wound runs so deep. You weren't losing to your sibling. You were fighting a narrative that was decided long before you had any chance to speak. The tragedy of childhood comparison is that it doesn't end when you leave the house. It continues because it moves inside you. At first, the voice comes from the outside. A parent says, "Your brother never acts like this." They praise your sister in front of you. They make that tiny disappointed face when you speak. But over time, something happens. Your brain stops waiting for them to say it. You say it for them. This is what psychologists mean when they talk about internalization, when an external judgment becomes an internal identity. The parent doesn't have to criticize you anymore because you've learned how to do it automatically, and it shapes the way you measure your worth. In the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger introduced social comparison theory, the idea that humans evaluate themselves by comparing to others. Normally, that's just part of being human. But when you're the compared sibling, comparison doesn't stay social, it becomes existential. Because as a child, parental approval isn't just emotional comfort, it's safety. In a child's nervous system, love is survival. So when your sibling gets praised and you get measured, your brain encodes a brutal lesson. You're not valuable for being you. You're valuable only if you're better than someone else. That creates what therapists call conditional self-worth. Your sibling becomes the standard. You become the deviation. So even when you accomplish something, your mind immediately searches for a way to reduce it. Yeah, but he makes more money. Yeah, but she's more attractive. Yeah, but they're further ahead. And the worst part, you can't win this game because the finish line keeps moving. You aren't living your life. You're auditing it, grading it, scanning it for proof that you deserve space. And if someone compliments you instead of feeling proud, you tense up because the old program expects a counterpunch. Don't get too confident. Don't get too comfortable. You're still second. This is how comparison becomes a permanent soundtrack, not just something you experienced, but something you carry. Here's the part most people miss. Being compared doesn't just hurt your feelings, it rewires your nervous system. Because when you're a child, you don't have the luxury of seeing your parents objectively. You can't say they're emotionally immature. You can't analyze the family dynamics. All you know is this: if I'm not chosen, I'm not safe. So your body treats comparison like a survival threat. Not logically, biologically. That's why, even as an adult, one small comment can trigger a wave of panic that feels completely out of proportion. It's not you being dramatic. It's your nervous system returning to an old emergency. And people respond in different trauma patterns. 1. Hypervigilance. You become a scanner. Always reading faces. Always interpreting tone. Always checking for signs that someone prefers someone else. You don't relax in love, you monitor it. 2. Freeze, shut down. After enough losing, your system learns. Don't try, you go numb. You procrastinate, you disappear emotionally. It looks like laziness from the outside, but inside, it's protection. 3. People pleasing. You become the easy one, the helpful one, the one who never needs too much, because your body learned that love is earned through being low maintenance and impressive, and that's the trap. When comparison becomes your childhood environment, your nervous system starts to believe safety is only possible in one condition: if I outperform, or if I become invisible. So even years later, you're not just chasing success, you're chasing regulation. You're chasing the feeling that you finally get to breathe. So what happens to a child who grew up under constant comparison? They don't just get over it, they adapt. And those adaptations become personality, until one day you wake up at 30, 40, 50, and realize you've been living inside a script that wasn't yours. Most adults who are compared fall into one of 3 archetypes. Archetype 1, the exhausted perfectionist. This person becomes addicted to achievement. They're always upgrading: career, body, status, productivity. From the outside, they look impressive, but inside, they're never at peace, because they aren't chasing success. They're chasing a feeling. If I become undeniable, no one can replace me. And even when they win, they can't enjoy it. Their nervous system immediately moves the goalpost. Archetype 2, the defeated rebel. This person learned early that the game was rigged, so they quit. Not because they lack talent, but because trying feels dangerous. Trying creates hope, and hope creates the risk of humiliation. So they protect themselves with underachievement. They say, I don't care, but deep down they're terrified that effort will confirm the old verdict. Still not as good. Archetype 3, the invisible peacemaker. This is the one people rarely talk about. The child who became easy, the adult who never asks for too much, the one who keeps the peace, reads the room and shrinks their needs before anyone else can reject them. They often appear kind, responsible, emotionally intelligent, but it's not always health. Sometimes it's survival. And if you want to know whether this comparison wound is still running your life, listen for these signs. You can't tolerate being average. Praise makes you uncomfortable. You assume love is competitive. You scan for signs of replacement. You struggle to enjoy your own wins. You either overwork or self-sabotage. You feel behind even when you're doing well. If any of that hit a nerve, it's not because you're broken. It's because you were trained to live like you were always being measured. This is where the comparison wound becomes the most painful, because it doesn't stay in childhood. It follows you into love. When you grow up being measured against a sibling, your nervous system learns a toxic rule. Affection is limited, and someone else can take it from you. So in adult relationships, you don't just look for connection, you look for evidence. You analyze tone, you memorize patterns, you replay conversations, you track how fast they respond. You notice who they laugh at a little more, who they compliment a little longer. And without realizing it, your partner stops being a teammate and becomes a judge. You're not asking, do they love me? You're asking, am I the favorite? That's why people who are compared often struggle with jealousy they don't understand, intense fear of being replaced, constant self-comparison to an ex, a co-worker, a friend, needing reassurance but feeling ashamed for needing it, or testing love, pulling away to see if the other person chases. And here's the key reframe. Jealousy isn't always toxicity. Sometimes jealousy is a trauma alarm. It's the nervous system saying, I've been here before. I know what it feels like to come second. I know what it feels like to lose love to someone else. So healing isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming safe, inside your own body. So love no longer feels like a contest you have to win. And now we have to talk about the sibling. Because this is the most complicated part. Even if your brother never bullied you, even if your sister tried to protect you, even if they were genuinely kind, you might still feel resentment. Not because you're evil, but because your subconscious didn't experience them as a person. It experienced them as a verdict, as proof that love could be given fully to someone else, while you had to beg for scraps. So the sibling becomes the symbol of what you didn't get. And that's how the wound turns family into enemies. Sometimes it creates distance. Two adults who feel like strangers. Sometimes it creates fake peace, polite smiles with tension underneath. And sometimes it turns into lifelong rivalry, where every life milestone feels like another competition. But here's the twist most people miss. The golden child often suffers too. They grow up in a cage of perfection, terrified that one mistake will cost them their status. They're loved for being right, not for being real. And many golden children learn to stay loyal to the system by stepping on the scapegoat, because they fear losing their place. So the truth is brutal, but freeing. Your sibling wasn't the architect. They were another character in the same dysfunctional play. And healing begins when you stop fighting the wrong opponent. So how do you break free from the comparison program? How do you silence the voice that still whispers? Not as good, not as chosen, not enough? You don't heal this by winning. You heal it by exiting the race. Here's a simple protocol. Practical, but powerful. Step 1. Grieve what you didn't get. You may never hear your parents say, "We were wrong, you were enough." And that loss deserves grief. Because until you accept it, you'll keep chasing it through achievements, relationships, and approval. Step 2. Reclaim your separate identity. Write down 30 things that are you, that have nothing to do with your sibling. Your taste in music, your values, your strengths, the way you care about people. This is not self-help fluff. This is psychological territory reclamation. Step 3. Map your triggers. Notice when comparison spikes. Family gatherings, social media, success moments, dating. Name it. This is the old program. Naming breaks the spell. Step 4. Drop the rope. Every time the mind says, "He's ahead, she's better," practice the same response. "I'm not competing, I'm building my life." And finally, set boundaries. When someone compares you, you can say calmly, "I'm not available for comparison. Please speak to me as an individual." Because you were never meant to be a copy. The world already has one of them. What it needs is one of you. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment below. And if you want more deep dives like this into psychology and healing, subscribe to the channel. We're building a community where you don't have to run anymore. Thank you for watching.